Can I park my food truck anywhere in Florida? Well, in this video, we're going to dive into the can and cannot areas where you can park a food truck legally. We're going to give you a rundown of the permits. We're going to start it right now. Guys, so welcome back to Food Truck Freaks. It is Damian Roberti, founder and CEO of Food Truck Freaks. We are YouTube's premier food truck entrepreneur channel, bringing you tips and tricks, pointers, and actionable information to get you up and running with your food truck business. Now, in this video, we actually are answering a question from one of our subscribers on our other food entrepreneur channel, which is Marketing Food Online. We actually have 3 different food entrepreneur channels here on YouTube. You can check out those links, of course, down in the description. And we have a ton of free resources, even podcasts, down in the links below to our website and the podcast links. So let's dive right into it. So food trucks have become increasingly popular in Florida in recent years, and of course for good reason. With its warm climate, a diverse population, and thriving tourism industry, of course, Florida is a great place to start a food truck business. However, it is important, though, to understand that the laws and regulations that govern food trucks in the state before you start parking and serving customers. You got to know where you can park and how you can park and where you can't park, because you can get ticketed, fined, or even lose your license for your food truck. So can I park a food truck anywhere in Florida? That's the great question. The short answer is no. Now, you cannot park a food truck anywhere you please in Florida. While food trucks are becoming more common, of course, there are still regulations in place to dictate where and when they can park. Now, to operate a food truck legally in Florida, you will need to obtain, of course, the appropriate permits and, of course, follow the laws and regulations specific to your area in Florida. Now, they do slightly vary, but what I'm about to dive into is going to give you a good foundation and a good understanding of what you can expect in your city or your county. Of course, you can check with them specifically on what would be required, because some have different variations of what I'm about to tell you. Now, permits you'll need to operate, of course, a food truck in Florida. Now, the first step in operating a food truck in Florida is to obtain the necessary permits. The specific permits that you will need may vary depending, of course, like I just mentioned, on your location, but some of the most common actually include the following. So, of course, a business license. So to operate any kind of business in Florida, even a food truck, you will need to obtain a business license from the state. Okay, that has nothing to do with the city or county. That's actually a state license. This license can actually be obtained from the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulations. You can actually get that on their website online. Number 2 is the mobile food vendor permit. Now, this, of course, is a must. So to operate a food truck in Florida, you will need to obtain a mobile food vendor permit from your local county health department. Now, this permit actually ensures that your food truck meets all the health and safety standards set up by the state. Okay, and number 3, occupational license. So depending on the city and the county where you plan to operate specifically your food truck, you may need to obtain an occupational license. Now, this is a little different from other licenses, okay? This license is issued by the local government and allows you to legally operate your business within that specific area. Number 4 is going to be a food service establishment permit. Now, depending on the type of food that you plan to serve, you may need to obtain a food service establishment permit. Now, this permit is required for any business that prepares or serves any food to the public. That includes, actually, by the way, food trucks. So keep that in mind. Next up is number 5, a sales tax permit. Now, if you plan to sell food directly to your customers, which of course you do through your food truck window when you get done making the food, you will need to obtain a sales tax permit from the Florida Department of Revenue. Now, this permit allows you to collect and remit sales tax on the sales that you make specifically through the food truck itself. All right, now let's dive into the laws and regulations for operating a food truck in Florida, and then we're going to dive specifically into the parking aspects of it. Now, in addition to obtaining the necessary permits, there are several laws and regulations that food truck operators in the state of Florida specifically must follow. Now, these include, number 1, zoning laws. Okay, so before you can park your food truck, as we mentioned before, in Florida, you're actually going to need to ensure that the location is zoned for commercial use. You can contact and reach out to your local city or county government to find out specifically the zoning requirements in your area. Zoning, guys, is super important because it differentiates residential zoning from commercial zoning. There is a big difference, and it's a big no-no when it comes to operating businesses in a commercially or non-commercial and residentially zoned area. That's basically where, for an example, it would be like a housing area or neighborhood, or a place where there's homes, where it's actually a park or something that's not necessarily commercially allowed. That's what you want to be aware of. Number 2 is health and safety regulations. Now, food trucks in Florida are required to meet certain health and safety standards to protect customers from foodborne illnesses, pretty much like restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, and such. So these regulations actually include proper food storage, preparation, handling of the food itself, as well as regular inspections by your local health department. Number 3, you're going to have insurance requirements. Of course, food truck operators, like any other food business in Florida, are required to carry liability insurance to protect themselves and, of course, their customers in the case of any accident or an injury due to your food truck. Now, number 4, this is something that a lot of food truck entrepreneurs, when they start out with, are not aware of and don't think about. But there is signing regulations. Now, the size and placement of signage on your food truck may be regulated also by your local city or county's regulations and laws. So be aware of that. Now, you may need to obtain a permit for your signage, and you may be required to include certain information, such as your business name and contact information, in order to get that specifically approved and allowed. Now, let's dive into that. Where can you park your food truck in Florida? Now, once you've obtained all the necessary permits, as we had just discussed, the following laws and regulations for operating a food truck in Florida must be adhered to really well, okay? So you will need to determine where you can park your food truck. Some of the common locations for food trucks in Florida are, number 1, public parks. Now, many cities and counties in Florida actually allow you to park your food truck in those public parks, especially during festivals or certain events, with, of course, approval from the city or the county. Number 2, private property. Now, with the owner's permission, food trucks can also park on private properties, such as a shopping center, office parks, or even like a commercial area. However, it's important to make sure that the property is zoned for commercial use and that you have obtained the necessary permits to park and operate your food truck there. But that is true. Private property is allowed if you have the owner's permission. Number 3, food truck parks. Now, in recent years, food truck parks have become increasingly popular in Florida. Now, these parks are designated areas where multiple food trucks can actually park and operate in one single location. Now, often with shared seating and entertainment areas that come along with it. So, food truck parks, definitely number 3. Number 4, special events. Yes, food trucks are a popular choice for special outdoor events such as weddings, parties, or even corporate events. However, again, you will need to obtain the necessary permits and approval for the event from the event organizer to park and serve food at that event. Now, let's dive into where you cannot park your food truck in Florida. While there are many locations where you can legally, of course, park, there are several areas that you cannot. And now these areas are the following 4 areas. Number 1, residential areas. Food trucks are generally not allowed to actually park in residential areas, as they are typically zoned for residential use only. Number 2 is public streets. Now, listen to me, hear me out on this. You probably think, well, public streets, Damien, yeah, I can park my food truck on a street near a beach. I've got approval for that. Now, while some cities and counties may allow food trucks to park on public streets, many have specific laws and regulations in place to prohibit this. In some cases, you may need to obtain a permit or permission from the city or county specifically to park in the public street. So you can't just randomly park in a public street where you want. Number 3, high traffic areas. Food trucks may be prohibited from parking in high traffic areas such as a busy intersection or even a highway due to safety concerns. A lot of cities and counties say that's a no-no, so you want to make sure you're not in a busy high traffic area. It's also a safety issue too for your customers and even yourself. Number 4, near competing businesses. Now, of course, food trucks serve food, obviously, but they may also be prohibited from parking near competing businesses such as brick and mortar restaurants, as this can create an unfair competition, and a lot of restaurants actually are required to ask that you either be 500 feet or even 1,000 feet away from where they are. Now, the cost of operating a food truck in Florida, let's dive into that really briefly too. I wanted to cover this as well. So the cost of operating a food truck in Florida can actually vary depending upon several factors. Now, this including the type of food that you plan to serve, the location where you plan to operate, and the equipment and supplies you will need. Some of the common costs associated for operating that food truck in Florida are these. Now, number 1, permits, of course. Now, the cost of many of the permits actually vary depending on your location and the type of permit you need. But in general, mobile food vending permits, for example, can cost anywhere from about $100 to about $500 per year. Okay, and remember, they're annual. Number 2, equipment and supplies. Now, food trucks, of course, require specialized equipment and supplies such as food cooking appliances, refrigeration units, disposable utensils, and containers. Now, these costs can also vary depending on the size and, of course, the complexity of your food truck menu and what you're actually selling. But keep that in mind as well. Number 3, fuel and maintenance. Now, since food trucks are mobile, of course, you will need to factor in the cost of fuel and regular maintenance to keep up and maintain the truck running smoothly. So every year, you should put away a little bit of money each month on an annual basis to make sure your truck is running in a smooth manner. Number 4. Now, insurance. As we mentioned before briefly, liability insurance is required for food truck operators in Florida and can cost several $100s per year or even a couple thousand. You want to try to get just the minimum of what you need. Of course, I'm not an insurance salesman, but the basic policy to cover what's required is always a good thing. Number 5, rent and utilities. Keep this in mind too. If you plan to operate your food truck from a dedicated space, such as a commercial kitchen, or even such as a place as a food truck park, you may need to also pay rent or utilities in that area. So to wrap it up, in summary, while food trucks, of course, are becoming more popular in Florida than ever, in 2023, there are specific laws and regulations that govern where and when they can operate. So to operate your food truck legally in Florida, you will need to obtain the appropriate permits and healthy, safe department permits and licenses as well. So do keep that in mind. Of course, while the cost of operating a food truck in Florida can vary greatly, just depending upon your city and county, with the proper planning and preparation, a food truck can definitely be a success in Florida. Don't stop yourself if you have a lot of questions or challenges. Check out our channel here. Make sure you subscribe. We have a lot of great marketing tips, promoting tips, multiple streams of revenue, how to create multiple streams of revenue from a food truck videos. We got a lot of great resources, and I'll see you on our next video.